Okay, so um, I hope that everything has been going well since um, the last video. A new update is, I guess, there's been like a refining in like my approach to things. Um, as far as like practice, I started illustrating a book, which is very exciting because I've been wanting to illustrate a book for a while. And I think most recently, like when I was thinking about things that I wanted to do, if I had my preference, illustrating a book was like really high up on the list. I started, um, I guess, on a comic, and that's been very slow moving. Like, I read a lot of, like, not a lot, but I subscribe to two um, comics on Webtoons, and one of them is called Let's Play, and the other one is called, I think, True Beauty. And both of them are really good, you know? And like after I started trying to do it myself, like I've tried a few times before, and that's a whole thing within itself because I discovered really early on like how challenging it is. Unless these people are just so talented and it just comes naturally to them, which I think that is also part of it too, because the storytelling in both of these people's works, one of them, her name is Mongrel Marie on Instagram. I don't know what her life name is. And the other person, I'm not really sure what their name is. But like it's just like a well orchestrated story, both of them, and other like comics and manga that I've read. Like, I know that on some of these, somebody is writing and another person is illustrating, but all of it is really challenging. I don't want to say hard, but it is. I'll just keep it real, and I was kind of in my feelings for a while about it. And, it kind of caused me to take a hard chill, Like that's a West Coast R, hard. If you know anything about like California and how people pronounce their R's out there, it's that kind of hard. So I can't really do it, I'm a East Coast Northern kind of girl, even though maybe I'm West Coast at heart. You feel me? So, but anyway, I'm kind of off topic, but yeah, like I took a hard chill, like for, man, I don't know, some months. I didn't touch the project like at all, and it never like left my mind. But I'm kind of at that point again now. Like I finished up a contract, and it was for um, a board game design. And then, I was working on the comic at the tail end of that, but mostly on that when the contract was, when we were still working on the project. And then when I stopped, I kind of went to, the comic part, but I didn't get as far as I wanted, even though every time I worked on it, I made a lot of progress. And I think that is an illustration of where I am as like an artist on something like this. Like my skill level in the arena of digital comic book and my skill level in software, particularly Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, when they come together, I find that there are a lot of new things. I have a lot of ideas that I want to implement, and I have to figure out how exactly to do it. Like, I can figure out how to do it, but there are ways to do things better, and there's a certain look that I want to go for. And that kind of leads me to, like, I guess the core topic of this video. I started a new project, like I said earlier, illustrating a book. It's 13 chapters, and I'm doing 7 full-page illustrations. So, like, every other chapter is getting an illustration, roughly speaking, you know. And so for my, like, warm-ups to get ready for something like that, usually I, like, practice, and then I go into maybe taking that practice session a little further. But I've found that, you know, warming up before, like, you're starting on something helps. But usually I'm never going into a piece of work with the intention of it turning into something, like, final. But sometimes I take, well, most of the time I take my sketches further, because I don't usually have, like a finished piece in mind. Like, I don't go into something like, this is what I want this to be like. It's happened a few times. Like, most, I think, like, with logos and stuff, that's one thing. But my last, like, sketch that turned into something final is this one of a girl, like, kneeling in the forest, kind of. You can't really tell it's a forest, but she's in a forest, and there's mushrooms nearby, and a snake, like a python, like a big python, and a bird's wing, and a horse, and what do you call it? An axe. So I set out with that, and that to be a final piece. Even though it was practice, it was like a concentrated practice where I want there to be a human involved, I want there to be some nature, I want there to be animal life, and throwing in the weapon is just kind of like that added thing, so it didn't turn so just give it that hard, you know, element, you know, especially since it's an axe, like, you, and I guess you can kind of say it's a tomahawk. It is a tomahawk, actually, but, you know, the hard edge, a sharp edge, a blade, metal, stuff like that. Like, I thought it was just like a good, element to, like, include with the other things, you know. So that was something that I kind of put together. I wanted there to be, like, it all was like photo, most of it was had a photo reference, and I wanted to do something different in the composition. So you fast forward now to, like, the book, the author, she had her own sketches of what she came up with. So I've been kind of going off of those. I'm learning that there's different ways to, like, this kind of project, because, like, I've had an idea of having to read a book all the way through and really sit down with the author and come up with all of the characters, but she had them all pre-planned, which is very cool. You know, it's not so rigid that I had to, like, really follow, like, a certain face. Like, there's certain hair and body type and characteristics of things, but there's a lot of artistic freedom too. Like, I'm reading like Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. I think that's the title. It's like a prequel to Game of Thrones, and it's illustrated. And the two main characters are the ones that are in the majority of the illustrations. And you can tell that, it's very specific off of what the author had in mind. Maybe the artist maybe breathed life into like one of the main characters, but another one is from a certain family that has a certain look. So it's cool to be able to learn about these things. With game design, like my very first game that I got hired onto was very cool. It was like the first time like I had ever done anything like that. I've played a lot of games, like, come up with idea, just a lot, but designing one with somebody, it was very cool. And then, that person came into that project having already designed some mobile games. And then the next game I got hired for, it was kind of like the same thing. So now with the book, I've been in this kind of position before, but not in this way. And it really is nice because, it's a specific kind of experience, and that kind of brings me back around to like the way I warm up. It used to be kind of like sketch what I want, practice something that's difficult, but now like I have like tutorials that I've downloaded from mostly DeviantArt. People put up tutorials, and what I concentrated on now was drawing clothing, most specifically like different types of fabric and material and the way that it folds. So it's been nice because my journal has taken on this kind of school book kind of feel because I've taken those people's notes, and I really had to get over, the whole self-taught artist dilemma kind of thing. Like I started feeling like I was cheating because I was taking notes from somebody else, and then I see these Instagram pages and you see these titles like saying self-taught, and it felt like they were really proud of that. And I felt like that was cool, and I felt like it was cool because I've been in school for art my whole life almost. It's like I started out doing it on my own. But then as like my parents, especially my mom, saw that I was into it, I took like, I think outside classes. I know I took culinary classes. I don't know if I took outside art classes before I got to middle school. But then in high school, I got put into advanced placement. And I always learned from people. I always hung around, like, there were always artists that I watched. Like, I watched a lot of, like, Bob Ross. And I studied, like, art history, like, a lot. And I kind of mimicked the kind of notebooks that I saw, especially like of Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. They were my two big favorites. And Rembrandt, his painting style, like that dark and light kind of situation. I always liked that, approach. And the meanings and things in paintings. Even still lives and stuff like that. But so in short, like, and I also had like a great painting mentor in college. Well, pseudo mentor. I wasn't like under her wing directly, but she did agree to be my personal, like, have an independent. She agreed to an independent study with me. I had a class. Well, okay, so this is what happened. Like, there was a painting teacher at my university, and I didn't like her art, but I also didn't like her personality. And it was really important to me. Like, I couldn't accept that I would be learning from this person. Like, with the woman I had an independent study with, I had her for figure drawing and portrait drawing. I was a graphic design major, so I did have studio classes. So that was very cool, you know. And her name was Yusha Liu, and she's ranked one of the top 25 painters in China, you know. And she was just in town because her friend, I think, taught at the university, and that's how she got down there. My university was it's like in a little small town, and like the university is plopped, and the nearest city is 45 minutes away, you know. I went to a school, I went to Georgia Southern University, and it's like 45 minutes from Savannah. The name of my county that my school is in is Statesboro, so there's nothing around. You know, Atlanta is like 4 hours north of this school. So she was down there, you know, hanging out, like, painting. Like, I used to sneak looks in her studio, you know. Uncool. I didn't do anything besides admire, like, her setup. I couldn't even get my head around her technique, you know. But back to the whole situation, like I was cool with learning from her. I felt like she could teach me a lot. Not that I knew everything, but, you know, I really admired her style. Like, awesome, you know, like, just one little stroke, you know, like, every one of her lines had meaning and was, like, really well done. Now you go to this other teacher, and she used to talk like she knew everything, and I would look at her work and I'd be like, this is some straight bullshit, you know, if we really want to be real about it. And I could have been more accepting of her work, but the way that she spoke about, like, what she knew, it just went to this level of, like, this isn't adding up. And I couldn't tolerate talking to her. I couldn't tolerate listening to her. And I had already gotten into, like, a scuffle with one of my other professors, because we kind of went down this road. Like, she seemed like she had cool qualities, but she did nonsense work, you know, in my opinion. And she was professional, just for photography, like studio photography. And she, at the end of the semester, wrote a note, either to me or to the dean, saying all these things about me as a student. Like, I forget exactly what she said, but none of it was good. Like, it was all, like, maybe I was difficult to work with and things like that, but I wasn't a student that was just like, here, come teach me some stuff, even though your work is nonsense. Like, definitely wasn't my first rodeo. And maybe I was a little bit immature at that time, because I'm thinking you can learn something from anybody. But even now, you know, 20 years later or so, about 18 years later, really, because I was an upperclassman, you don't just learn from anybody. You don't just take notes from anybody. Like, I don't, you know, want to learn from anybody who's going to teach me nonsense, you know? Like, my mentor is fresh. Like, you have to, with your teachers, professors, at least admire their work to a degree. If not, it's like it's just not the right match. So I had already gone through that with this photography professor. And so when you got to oil painting, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're talking about painting here, people. Painting, you know? Photography is one thing. Like, you're teaching me how to go into a dark room and develop stuff. It's very technical, you know? So I could deal with that. Doesn't matter what your work looks like. Yeah, we might disagree with what my finished product is like, but fundamentally, you're teaching me about all the chemicals. You're teaching me about processing times. You're teaching me about all these other little things that I'd never been exposed to before. All right? So, you go to painting though. Whoa! Whoa! This is like my concentration. Like in my artistic life, my things have always been sculpture and painting. Like, I haven't sculpted in years, but I still consider sculpting as one of my primo foundations, and painting is another one. Painting and I have this relationship where I'm looking at it from afar, like we're gonna be together when we're together, but right now I have to do this digital thing. But you go back to school, this person's gonna be teaching me about painting, and they make some nonsense. I'm sorry, I just couldn't sign up for that agenda. Couldn't. And I was just like, no. And so then I went to the dean because I got acquainted. I was going to say cool with the dean, but the dean is the dean. And I got acquainted with the dean because the registrar's office made a mistake with my schedule one semester really early on in my career, I guess. Like, when I first started taking my major classes, they made a mistake. And then I had to meet with him in his office once a week. And he had me write a paper. And it was comparing the Baroque. Actually, he's like, you choose the topic. So I compared the Baroque art style, the Baroque art period, to the war in Bosnia. And, you know, it got published. So that's cool. So, you know, minorly. No, nothing major. don't make it, no, nothing major, but it was cool because I respected him, you know. I think it's because he was kind of scary, and people in the department were kind of like, they didn't talk to him, but then he was cool, you know, and his approach to the class was, I appreciated it because, you know, he just let me do my thing, and it came out to be some bizarre paper, but it turned out to be a paper that made sense. So when it came to me taking to this painting class, I knocked on his door and was like, I want to take a independent study with Yusha. And he was like, she doesn't really do that, but if she agrees, you can do it. And she agreed, and that was awesome. So, and that changed my life, you know. Like, I have a painting that she put a little stroke on. Yo, it changed the whole thing. And this is like a 3 foot by 3 foot painting. And by the way, her paintings are like 15 feet by like 8 feet. All kinds of stuff. Crazy. Great technique. Like, high selling points. But I mean, her work is beautiful. I still have like a painting sitting right here that kind of has, like, I would get up, but you know, I won't, but you know, you could just see her influence in it, and it touched my life. That was pivotal. That was a pivotal point in my artistic career for painting, especially. Like, I've never forgotten the things that she taught me, ever. So, you know, you fast forward to now, I'm extremely selective about who I'm going to listen to. And I'm, you know, that's already been set in stone, so it's all good. But then with my warming up to the book design, I do come full circle most of the time. I'm getting better. I've made improvements, but like now it's been warming up with a specific warm up. I'm warming up with fabric. I'm warming up with a specific weakness, and I'm following tutorials that are drawn out paper tutorials, like, document tutorials versus like a YouTube video. And I'm basically just copying their work and reading their notes. Well, not copying the work too. Actually, I'm copying it, but I'm doing it in my style. And I'm using their notes to kind of like dictate what my potential next move is. And it's helping me understand. Before, I was like self-taught. Oh, I taught myself how to draw this fabric. No one taught me how to draw this fabric. And it's like, okay, not me. I'm okay. Like, I don't even know what self-taught means, honestly. I guess taking no classes at all, having no mentor, no instructor, it's just you solo. That's cool. But like with my weaknesses especially, like the right teacher is helpful. So I feel like I've been making progress. I don't think I have anything. Like, I think this is like a good demonstration of what's happening recently. It's just that kind of approach, I kind of skipped over some things, so I'm just trying to refine stuff that I'm not the strongest at. But that's my update, along with some commentary. So, and I'm not an asshole student, but it's like, I don't know. It's like if you see somebody who's a rock climber and you want to be a rock climber, and you see your instructor like fall off the wall like 8 times, you're not going to really want to have that person as your instructor. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's say like you fly by them. Not saying I'm flying by people, like, but let me take that part back, because that just sounds like something I'm not trying to say. But you know what I'm saying? Like a pilot, and they've taken this, plane off the ground. Like, you've taken the plane off the ground 1,000 times, and then you get in the co-pilot seat with this person who's supposed to be your instructor for your like license, and they can't even get the plane off the ground correctly. And then they start telling you that what you're doing is wrong and you should do it their way, and then they're adamant about it. That's when, as a student, you just say, you know what, this isn't the right match. There's somebody out there that this is going to work really well for, but it's not me. I'm very happy where I am. So, want that to be very loud and very clear. These are just examples of why in my college years I threw such a big tantrum in disagreement to a couple of my professors. It was kind of my nature, it kind of still is, but now I'm kind of seeing why. Painting? Come on, man. Like, no. And a little side note, ceramics. I'm very interested in ceramics. It's the same thing as my photography teacher. Like, when I had ceramics classes, first of all, my ceramics, instruction started in high school. So I had a few years, not years, but I had like 4 semesters over the 4 years of high school in ceramics. And my advanced placement teacher, Miss Toth, she was awesome. But she was just cool, and she knew what was up. But she was a good artist, good around the world like artist. And she taught me like the elements, of ceramics. And there was no like trying to correct anything I was doing, unless, I was just throwing wrong, or, glazing wrong. So when I got to like university, it's like kind of like the same thing. So I would like to do ceramics again. That's just a matter of studio. A lot of this is a matter of studio time. Part of why I'm not painting as much is one, my setup is pretty good, but oil paints are toxic, and I'm kind of getting the notion that like it's not the time for me to be painting, in my apartment. I think I could, just don't think it's the safest thing. That's not the biggest reason. The biggest reason has just been priorities. I haven't made it a priority, but it dawned on me that it also could be in tandem with this not being like the ideal setup. So ideally, I would have like a studio where I could sculpt in clay. My ultimate goal is to sculpt in marble, but that's a very expensive endeavor. You know what I'm saying? Like these big ass slabs of marble. And guess what? That's what I'm practicing on. I don't even know what you practice on to prepare for marble. Maybe stone. I wouldn't mind sculpting in stone, but like clay and polyurethane and stuff like that, that'd be very cool. I worked in a sculpture studio for a while, and that was awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, place to sculpt, place to do ceramics, a place to paint, and a small tattoo studio. That would be ideal. Ideal, like a 2-chair studio. So, anyway, just sharing my dreams there for a second. Yeah. So on that note, I'll see you next time, and I'll be back with another update. Take care in the meanwhile, and see you later. Bye.